Hi, everybody. Welcome to the UMA Alumni Association's webinar, 5 Strategies to Help You Find a Job. My name is Alexis, and I'm the Alumni Engagement Coordinator at UMA. I'm happy to introduce today's webinar speaker, Lindsay England. Lindsay works in UMA's Career Services Department as a Senior Director. She's been with UMA for nearly 7 years, and Lindsay has worked in several different industries and has worked her way into a senior management position over the years. She's excited to share more of her background and her personal stories about working in different industries and transitioning jobs. But before Lindsay begins discussing her top 5 strategies for searching for a new position and shares her own experiences, we have a few reminders to go over. So the presentation will last for about 20 minutes so that we can leave a few minutes at the end for the question and answer session. Feel free to send any questions as you think of them, and we'll collect them, and she'll address as many as possible at the end. This is the perfect opportunity to really ask Lindsay any specific questions you may have about the process of searching for a new job, interviewing, or following up. One thing we did want to mention is if you experience audio issues during the webinar, we recommend exiting out of your current browser and opening the webinar in a different browser. For example, close Chrome and open Internet Explorer. We also recommend closing out of other pages and applications to help the platform run as smooth as possible. We did want to let you guys know that you are muted to prevent noise interference during the webinar, so if you have a question, be sure to send it in the questions box since we can't hear you. Last housekeeping item. The webinar is being recorded and will be sent to participants to view shortly after the webinar concludes. All right, Lindsay, I think we're ready when you are.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar session on job search strategies and how to be more effective while looking for your next opportunity. And thank you, Alexis, for that quick introduction. Before we get started, I want to expand a little bit on my background. Like Alexis shared, I have been with Ultimate Medical Academy's Career Services Department for over 6 years. Prior to UMA, I held various management positions in the retail industry, so coming to UMA was a slight industry change for me. In addition to my experience, I hold a master's degree in marine biology, which is a significant difference from the role I am currently in. During my transition to UMA, I was forced to push myself outside of my comfort zone, or what I felt was my norm. As I grew into a senior leadership role at UMA, not only did I have to be comfortable and confident with the diversity my background and education brought to the table, but I also had to be confident as a young female leader transitioning into corporate America. These facts about myself will be relevant throughout the session, as we will focus on 5 main strategies that will aid you during your job search, help you stand out from the other candidates applying, and are the 5 main strategies that I leverage to achieve the role I have as Senior Director of Career Services at UMA. Searching for a job can be stressful, especially if you are switching into a new industry. There are some key steps that you can take while beginning and pursuing your job search to keep you moving in the right direction of landing your dream career. Before you begin, there are a few things that I want you to remember. First, the job search takes time and requires commitment. Make sure that this is the right time for you to begin, taking into consideration the time it will take to interview and your ability to begin working. This is critical if you are currently multitasking priorities. Maybe you are continuing your education, working a job, and supporting a family. It is important to understand what your limits are, as well as how you can push yourself beyond your comfort zone. There are also certain tasks or activities you may need to temporarily sacrifice while beginning your job search, so make sure you are aware and committed to what those are before beginning. Secondly, don't become discouraged. There are a lot of job openings and a lot of candidates applying for them. So if you don't receive outreach from your first few applications or outreaches, keep trying. That likely means that there is a better fit waiting for you. Before I came to UMA, I was desperate to get out of the retail industry and hungry for a more stable position, and candidly, something with more traditional hours. It took about 5 job interviews at the wrong companies before I found UMA and the culture or opportunity fit that I had been looking for. Next, leverage your support system. Whether this is a family member, spouse, friend, or classmate, make sure you have someone there to cheer you on. If you don't have someone that immediately comes to mind, Don't forget about your career services advisor. Look to them as your personal cheerleader. They can continue to build on your career readiness skills while providing you with the tools you need to continue. If you do want to reach out to your advisor, you can call us at 866-473-9391. Now that we have covered the basics, let's get into the 5 key strategies that you should leverage while beginning your job search. Strategy number 1 is about job search preparation and having an interview-ready resume and cover letter, just in case, as well as letters of recommendation. All applications and interviews are going to require a resume, and some may ask for a cover letter. Make sure that you have your resume ready to go with any updates that need to be completed. If this is something that you need help with, this is another conversation that you should have with your career services advisor. Post-graduation, all UMA alumni still have access to our internal resume writing team, so your advisor can work with you on the updates that are needed, and our resume writers will put it into the best format for you. It's not only important to have electronic versions of your resume for applications, but equally as important to have printed copies. If you don't already have a professional Padfolio, I would recommend purchasing one and keeping it on hand always. You never know who you may run into while you're out running errands or at a routine doctor's appointment, so it's important to be prepared. Once you have your resume ready, it's important that you can speak to it. There are a few different parts to a resume, but overall it should tell a story of your qualifications. Be prepared to highlight some of your key accomplishments, previous experience, and education. If there is a specific software or skill that you are well versed in, list it and understand the relevancy to the position you may be applying for. Use your support system to practice and receive constructive feedback on how to improve. While in school, you likely completed a mock interview assignment with one of our mock interview specialists. Review the feedback that you obtained from your first mock interview and refresh on some of the best practices shared. It's important to remember that one mock interview isn't sufficient while job searching. You should practice before every single interview that you get, even if it's just in front of the mirror. Letters of recommendation are important because they can help you stand out from the hundreds of other applicants that an employer may receive. Reach out to your community to gather 1 to 2 letters of recommendation, preferably from a previous employer or coworker, instructor, or maybe even someone from past volunteer experience. These letters of recommendation don't need to be lengthy, but should highlight specifically why an employer should consider you. These are perfect to add to your portfolio of credentials and give you a few names of trusted individuals that you could also use as a future reference. Don't forget to always ask for permission from those who you will use prior to listing them as references. Strategy 2 is have a plan and know what you need. With every goal that you set, you always need a plan on how you plan to achieve it. You should start by defining what your goal is. This could mean what specialty you're most passionate about. Do you love kids? Maybe start with pediatric clinics, and then research all the employers in your area that align. Thankfully, in today's generation, most areas have countless healthcare clinics. Chances are you have visited a doctor, whether this is a general physician, urgent care, or even a dentist, within the last 60 days. You don't have to start from scratch. Start with who you know. Know exactly what you are looking for as well. You should already know what work schedule you need, and it is important to be as flexible as you can, especially when looking for an entry-level position in a new industry. Define the difference between what you want and what you need, and make sure you are looking for options in both to expand your opportunities. The same goes for rate of pay. We all want to make more money than we currently do, but know what is realistic for the position that you are looking for, especially if you are starting entry level, and understand what future earning potential is. A starting rate of pay doesn't mean a forever rate of pay. You also need to understand what you're qualified for and what is realistic. Whether you recently graduated from UMA or you graduated 5 years ago, put thought into these questions. What is your skill set? What key things did you learn while attending your program? What transferable skills do you have from previous experiences that apply to the role you are applying for? Make sure that it is clear to you and that you are applying for jobs within that skill set. If you are applying for positions that you don't yet qualify for, you may not see an immediate response. And if you are joining a new industry, you will likely be looking for an entry-level position. Don't let that discourage you, though. There is plenty of room for growth once you get your foot in the door. It's also important to plan your job search strategy out each week. If you work full-time, have children, or other outside commitments, this is especially important. Looking for a new job takes a lot of time and effort, so having a calendar of the days and times that you will source online, go door to door, and then actually interviewing will be important. I personally live by my Outlook calendar, and in addition to the tasks that I am responsible for within my current role, I also block out time that allows me to focus and prioritize my personal tasks that I need to complete. At home, I'm also really big on making lists due to the instant gratification of checking the box once I'm done. Find what works for you and repeat it over and over until it becomes a habit, and make sure you don't give up before day 21. Strategy number 3 is all about networking. Joining a new industry or changing jobs is scary, so leveraging people you already know will help make that easier. You should start by looking inside your medical circle. Remember when I asked you the last time you went to a doctor's appointment? Your current doctors, your friends' offices, and your neighborhood clinic all hire for the roles that you may be looking for. Are any of them hiring? Do they know that you're a UMA graduate? If not, now is the time to let them know. Hiring managers trust referrals, so even if your family physician is not currently hiring, make sure to ask if they know someone who may be. Networking is big in the healthcare industry, so don't be afraid to put your name out there. You should also look into freshening your social media presence. Yes, this also includes any personal accounts that you may have, such as Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. With the increase in social media utilization, more and more employers are looking here. This is actually one of the first places I personally look when I'm sourcing a candidate. Make sure everything you have posted is professional and something that you are proud of. Now is the time to start considering a LinkedIn account as well, where you can join different groups that may interest you, network with individuals of similar interests, and search for job postings. If you are unsure of how to get started, contact your career services advisor and they can help. We also have several blogs that discuss how to brand yourself on LinkedIn, how to create a profile, how to use social media during your job search, and more. Go to UMA's website and type LinkedIn in the search bar to read through them. Leveraging local recruiting agencies and healthcare chapters that may be available in your area is also important. This is a great way to not only meet individuals in your industry, but also allow others to help do some of the work for you. A recruiter will already be in contact with many companies within your area, and you can apply to their database that will match your resume to future opportunities as well. Healthcare chapters aren't necessarily just for job searching. However, they're a great way to meet future hiring managers in the industry that can connect you to opportunities you may qualify for. Additionally, this could give you an opportunity to increase your skill set and knowledge of the healthcare industry by allowing you to be a part of discussions, forums, and presentations that are informative and educational. You can find local chapters by doing a simple web search for them or also reaching out to your Chamber of Commerce. Make sure you are also researching upcoming job fairs and events in your area within the healthcare industry. Even if it's not a job fair, this is still a really great opportunity to meet new individuals who could be future connections. Remember strategy number 1 of having an interview-ready resume? Make sure to bring some copies with you. Come dressed for success and mock interview ready. Strategy number 4 is about following up to every outreach you make. In today's market, just applying for a job is not enough. Follow-up is important and could set you apart from the other applicants that may not be doing the same. I'd like to share a story with you about my career prior to UMA. As I grew within a management role in the retail industry, I was very passionate about a local company that I had applied to. They were hiring specifically for a district manager and had a mission that I truly believed in. After applying, I felt like I waited and waited and waited. And after about 48 hours, okay, so maybe patience isn't one of my strengths, I decided to make a follow-up call. Do you think that I reached the hiring manager immediately? Nope, and I didn't on my 3rd or 4th call either. Each time, I left a message for the same person about the same thing, stubbornly thinking that if I was going to hear a no, I was going to hear it from them. After about a week, and what felt like 25 follow-up calls later, I finally reached the regional manager. I'll never forget what she told me. I have received every message that you have left. I was confident that you would give up, and shocked each day when I came in and had another message waiting. You're clearly persistent and passionate about this opportunity, which is not something that we can train. I was immediately offered an interview and then hired on the spot, which launched my senior leadership career in the retail industry. If I had just applied for the position, there was a strong chance I would have never heard back about my resume, which was likely one among 500 plus that she had received. Although follow-up is important, you must always remain respectful and cognizant of the hiring manager's time. Before your follow-up, write down what you want to say and how you plan to approach the conversation. Are you going to follow up via phone, email, or in person? Each outlet will have a different approach, so make sure that you consider that before making the attempt. Make sure you keep record of where you are applying and employers that you are connecting with so you can consistently follow up. Always gather as many business cards as you can when meeting in person, and keep note of contact information from online applications. This will ensure that you are following up with the correct individual and in a timely manner. If you are collecting business cards, this is another item that you can add to your Padfolio. You can create a company wish list or top 10, rating them from highest to lowest of the positions that you were most passionate about. Again, find what works for you and stick with it. Be prepared to say no. Be prepared to hear no and realize that it is okay. Not every application is going to be a slam dunk, even if you have followed up. Hearing no is better than not hearing anything at all, and that means you are one step closer to hearing a yes. If you are following up in person or over the phone, make sure you practice what your response will be if this happens. Face-to-face, body language and facial expressions are literally worth 1,000 words. In these moments, the natural reaction will be disappointment, but make sure that you exude confidence and optimism. Set the expectation with the hiring manager that you would love to be considered for future opportunities. Not all hiring decisions are the right ones, even for experienced professionals. And remember that you can speak with your career services advisor if you need support before or after following up with an application. If you are following up from an interview, always provide a handwritten thank you card. In today's digital era, this is incredibly meaningful to a hiring manager. And most importantly, keep trying. If you attempt to follow up and still are unable to reach a hiring manager, wait a few days and try again. Persistence shows interest and commitment to the position that you applied for, which is something hiring managers are looking for in a candidate. Like the story I shared with you earlier, this hiring manager was waiting for me to give up. The fact that I didn't show her how committed I was to this position and succeeding. Your outreach, passion, and persistence could set you apart from the other applicants. The final and most important strategy is to not give up. You came to UMA for a reason, and graduating is a huge success that you should be proud of. As discussed before, searching for a job is a full-time job, and it can be exhausting. Leverage your support system, including UMA, so you aren't carrying the load yourself. It's okay to have down days, and it's important to take breaks. If you wake up and aren't feeling 150% like the best version of yourself, I'd recommend not to apply for a job or network with medical professions in your area that day. Take a day to reset and start over the next day. For every no that you may hear, you are one step closer to hearing a yes. Remind yourself that it may not have been a good fit and move on. As important as it is for a company to find the right candidate, it's equally as important for you to find the right company, since you will be investing a lot of time with them. Remember, if you give up, you have no chance of achieving the career you set out to find. Do not sell yourself short with the accomplishments that you have achieved so far, and use that as a motivating factor to keep pushing. Think back to why you enrolled at UMA in the first place. Whether that was to further your education, provide for a better future, or award yourself more career opportunities, each of these is directly tied to obtaining a career in your field of study. It's not always an easy feat, but it is worth it. Before we move into the Q&A session, let's recap the 5 job search strategies that we discussed. 1, have an interview-ready resume and cover letter, even if you don't think you need one. 2, have a plan and know what you need, including the amount of time you can commit to the job search. 3, network. Remember, you don't have to start from scratch. Start with who you know. 4, follow up. Don't expect an employer to reach out to you. Be respectfully persistent. And 5, most importantly, don't give up. You should be proud of your accomplishments and remember that every step of the way. Nothing that we have discussed today is groundbreaking, and very little of these strategies require a specific skill set. But if you stay focused, motivated, and committed, you will be moving in the right direction to achieving your desired position in the healthcare industry.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that presentation, Lindsay. Great tips. So before we go into the Q&A, we did want to mention Connect UMA. Connect UMA is our alumni platform where you can connect with other graduates, share stories, read career and interview tips, search the private jobs board, and more. So we encourage you to join if you haven't already. You can go to connectuma.com. And if you are already registered, we're so excited to have you on the platform, and we encourage everybody to download the mobile app for both iOS and Android. It's an easy way to stay connected to UMA and your fellow grads. And one more thing we wanted to mention, if you have questions, you can contact Alumni at ultimatemedical.edu. You can also call Career Services directly at 866-473-9391. That number is on the screen, so feel free to jot it down. But let's move into our first question, Lindsay. How do you recommend sending a handwritten thank you card after an interview?
I always recommend having one prepared and trying to give it the same day. So you could always bring it back in after your interview or hand it to the hiring manager once you are done. If this isn't something that you are comfortable with, though, I would try to not let it go past 24 hours from your interview for when you actually send the handwritten thank you card. And this is definitely more impactful than sending an email.
Good to know. All right, another question we got. Can I use a family friend for my letter of recommendation?
I'd always recommend to try to not use a family member or a friend for a letter of recommendation. Try to exhaust all of your professional network first. And remember, this could also include any volunteer experience that you might have, any contacts that you have while you were in school, or even a prior employer. If you have none of these options available, though, you could always make sure that it's somebody that you trust and make sure that they can speak to your professional work ethic.
Great. We've got a question here. Does Career Services help with the cover letter? So you mentioned that they help with the resume, but what about the cover letter?
That is definitely something that we can help with. In addition to that, we also have an online web application team, too. So if you're completing web applications online, you can contact your Career Service advisor, and they can help you with that as well. So if you don't currently have a cover letter, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll make sure that we're supporting you through that.
Wonderful. Another question, do you think following up by phone, email, or in person is better after submitting the application?
I think it's important to find what works best for you and what you are most comfortable with, but it also depends on the company that you're following up with. For example, if you're going into a hospital for an interview, you might have a harder time following up via phone, so it might be easier via in person or email. And since hiring managers are usually very busy, a phone is always a good option for follow-up. But this is a good example as to why it's important to grab a business card before you leave for an interview, because it gives you contact information for all different avenues of follow-up, including an email address.
Okay, great. So actually following up on that question, what's a good time frame to follow up?
I'd recommend within 48 to 72 hours of your interview or application. If you are actually in an interview setting, I think it's important to ask an employer when they plan on making a hiring decision, because this can help you gauge when follow-up should happen. So for example, if you interview on a Monday and they're looking to make a decision by Friday, following up, maybe around Wednesday doesn't hurt to see if they have finished their interviews. And if they haven't, then following up on the following Monday is a great time frame.
Okay, great. Another question here. So you mentioned healthcare chapters. How do you find a healthcare chapter?
So you can Google this information for local healthcare chapters in your area, and also check with your Chamber of Commerce. I also always recommend going to the AAPC website because they have a good list across the nation as well.
Great. We actually got another follow-up question on the time frame. So how often should you follow up? So how many times a week?
Again, I think it depends on the position and company that you're applying with. But I think, 2 times a week is completely appropriate if you know that they're still in the interview process specifically. And also trust your gut. If you're following up with a hiring manager and the follow-up isn't well received, gauge the amount of outreach that you're making at that point, and check with your career service advisor too, because they're also happy to do some follow-up on your behalf as well.
Lindsay, do you have recommendations for finding who the hiring manager is to follow up with when it's a web application?
It's a great question. Always start with looking on their website, because most companies, especially larger companies, have a Meet the Team section where you can determine who the hiring manager is. Anytime you do an online application, I would always follow up with a phone call, and whoever you reach on the line, you can also ask and let them know that you've completed an online application to determine who's the best person for you to follow up with as well.
Lindsay, what do you look for on a candidate's social media profile?
It's a great question, and I'd say to start, it's mostly professional content. So are they portraying themselves in a professional manner? Is it an employee that I would want representing our company specifically? And are they always positive? I think that's really important because there's some characteristics that are really hard to train in a new hire.
Okay, so if you saw, say, a lot of typos, would that deter you from hiring that candidate?
That would definitely contribute to whether I would bring them on it for an interview or not.
How do you write a cover letter?
So that's a great question, and I would say that a lot of the times a cover letter needs to be tailored to the position that you're applying for. It's really just a brief overview of why you're interested in that position and you feel that you're qualified for it. You could Google quite a few different templates, but a good option is to also reach out to your career services advisor because they can help you work with our resume writers to actually generate a cover letter that's tailored specifically to you and your skill set.
Another question similar. So my cover letter maybe needs a little bit of work. How should they be written and what exactly should they cover?
Another great question. I would say you should definitely keep it short and sweet. And if it is going longer than 1 page, then you should consider cutting it down. I do believe that you should have a purpose in the cover letter and specifically why you're interested in the position that you're applying for. So like I mentioned previously, you may want to tailor it for each application. But I do recommend if you're not currently working with your career services advisor and you're not happy with the cover letter you have today, that you reach out to us because that is something that we can help you with and put it in a professional template.
Great. Another question, is having more than 1 page a bad thing for either a resume or a cover letter?
For a cover letter, I'd specifically recommend having it 1 page. Remember that that's the first thing that a hiring manager is going to see. So you want to make sure that you can capture their attention within the first 5 seconds of them reading it. For a resume, it really depends on your previous experience. If you've got, more than 5+ years of experience, then I think it's okay for you to have multiple pages. Try to keep it within 2. I wouldn't recommend exceeding that specifically.
Okay. We've got a question here. Can mock interview questions be sent out? Is that something that they could practice on their own? Can they get a copy of it?
Yep. If you have done the mock interview assignment specifically with one of our mock interview specialists, they do provide a scorecard after the mock session that does have the questions covered. However, you can also Google just some common mock interview questions. That's a good resource. And when you do interview prep practice with your career service advisor, they can also email you some of the questions that you cover, so that way you can practice it with a friend or in the mirror or somebody that you trust.
Lindsay, do you have any recommendations on covering long gaps in employment?
That's a great question, and I think anything that you put in a resume, you also need to be equally as comfortable with speaking to in an interview. So I would say think about the gap in employment and think about the reason why. That could be because you were continuing your education. Maybe you were, focusing on a specific skill set that you wanted to refine, or maybe it was just because you wanted to focus on your family. There are specific transferable skills that apply to each of those that you can translate on a resume or in a conversation. So I'd say start with understanding why you have those gaps in employment. Write down some of the key things that you did during it, and if it's not something that you can present on a resume, make sure that you can actually speak to it if somebody asks you.
Okay. Another question here. Do you have any tips on the best way to search for a position in the World Wide Web?
So we always post positions on Connect UMA, so I think that's a good starting point. But I think also becoming familiar with some of the basic job search engines, such as Indeed, Career Builder, and Monster are really important as well. But I also think just networking with individuals on LinkedIn, because sometimes employers will post positions on there before they'll pay to post them on an actual job board. So I'd say starting with those are good. And then also even just something as simple as Craigslist. Some of the more smaller local offices will post on there because it's a free site, and you can get a quicker turnaround time rather than having to do an online web application.
Great. So kind of following up on that question, we've got a participant here who has great things to say about her career services advisor, helping her look for a job within her skill set. However, she does have this question: should I also be looking for a job in my field, or should I wait for my career services advisor to look for me?
That's a great question. You should always look at your relationship with your career service advisor as a partnership. Two working towards the same goal is going to be achieved much faster than one person working towards the same goal. So I would strongly recommend you working hand in hand with your career service advisor to try to find a job, especially since an employer is interested in you, not them. I think the biggest thing that's important is just communicating with your advisor on places that you're applying to, so we can help you keep track of that and help do follow-up if you need us to.
Definitely agree. Another question here: do you have any advice on how to talk to a hiring manager or convince them at a job fair?
It's another great question. I'd say at a job fair, remember that they're going to be seeing a lot of different candidates that day, and it's going to be really fast-paced. So it's important to practice your elevator pitch. So if you were given 30 seconds to sell yourself to a hiring manager, what would you say? And if you don't know that answer today, that's something that you should think through, because it's really the amount of time that you'll likely get at a job fair. And I also think it's important to remember at a job fair, it may not be uncommon to not get a hiring opportunity immediately, but it's a really great opportunity to get to meet individuals and follow up with them specifically.
All right, great. These are all great answers. We have a lot of questions still coming in, so we'll go over a few minutes, but the ones that we can't follow up with, we will follow up with you afterwards and try and get you an answer to your question, but we'll end on a few here. Okay, if you have put your resume into a few different places and you've had several companies offer you a job, sounds like a good position to be in, how do you choose? So maybe how do you find the right culture?
That's a great problem to have. I would say start with understanding what you're looking for in a long-term company and weighing the pros and cons of each. So each position may have a different starting rate of pay. It may have different benefits, They may have a different culture. Maybe they have a different schedule. I think it's important to understand specifically what are not only the short-term benefits, but the long-term benefits too. There could be positions that pay more in the short term, but the long-term growth potential is less. So I think it's really just, weighing out the pros and cons of each company and then just trusting your gut. If you go into an interview and the company and the hiring manager feels right, then that's probably a good fit for you to go to work to every day.
Awesome. Another question here. Do you have any advice on overcoming the lack of relevant work experience? So if you have no experience, what do you recommend?
Yep, I think I have a lot of experience with this, especially since I have experience transitioning into a new industry. Don't sell yourself short with the education that you have because, one, taking an online program is tough, but two, you've taken an accelerated online program that's got a lot of curriculum in it. So make sure that you sell your education that you have, especially since it is self-paced. That takes a lot of initiative and motivation to get it done. I'd also say look at your previous experience and determine what is a transferable skill. For example, communication skills. That isn't just specific to the medical industry. So if you have a customer service background, communication skills is a really good transferable skill that you have. Maybe it is the ability to, juggle multiple tasks and priorities. That's another transferable skill that somebody in the medical field will be looking for that you can take from, working in hospitality or maybe even in, the retail industry that will help you out in a future career as well. So like I said, look at your education and then anything transferable that could translate just across pretty much any industry.
Wonderful. Okay, so do you have any advice on when you're new to LinkedIn, how you can navigate building that network?
I would start with local companies in your area that you're passionate about and start looking at who works there. I like to always go to the company website and look at Meet the Team and start looking at some of the positions, maybe the lower level, look at for some front desk receptionists, some HR coordinators, individuals that would be willing to have a conversation with you about their company and just what the culture looks like specifically. And I would definitely recommend start connecting with some of the recruiters in your area specifically for the healthcare industry because their network will continue to expand and you'll continue to be a part of that once you reach out to them.
Great. I love this question. So how do you get past the spam and cookies associated with online applications? So we kind of covered this earlier, how you find that hiring manager.
So it's a great question. And specifically on the spam and cookies, I'm not an IT expert, so I would recommend reaching out to just our help desk specifically because they can help you with that. I do know that it has something to do with your browser settings specifically, but in terms of getting past individuals and just determining the hiring manager, again, if you go to an online website for that company, if it's available, you can usually figure that out if you go through their employee list. However, if you call the employer after you apply to, ask the first person that you speak with, who's the hiring manager? And maybe you can't speak to them that day, but at least then you get a contact information so you can start doing the follow-up with the right person.
Great. So we've gone over a bit, so we're going to just end on this one question. So how do you know who your career services advisor is? So you can just contact us, either email alumni@ultimatemedical.edu or call the team at 866-473-9391. We can definitely tell you who your advisor is and get you connected. We're definitely here to support you guys. We'll be following up with you all. Thank you for attending, and we hope you have a good rest of the day.